Okay, one question I had too was about the process and how you mentioned before about boredom and how important boredom is to creativity. So it's kind of circling back on that. What advice would you give people? I think you mentioned before about how like this world we live in is so like there's so much noise, there's so much consumerism, like there's so much, like you talked about just scrolling through. I find myself, doing this too, scrolling through this all this information and all these things. You get moved away from just you sitting there and creating. Question basically is what role do you think boredom and creating this space for writing, how important do you think that is, and what advice would you give if you have any on people in doing that, especially today?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, that's the biggest question for writers, I think, at this point in where the world is at, right?
Absolutely.
I look at I look at myself, and I'm aware of the fact that I grew up in a world where there's 3 TV channels. The books that I got were books I got from the local town in the used bookstore, the library. I had a tiny world with a lot of space in it to fill. Now it's completely the opposite. I mean, it's the opposite for me too, right? It's not like I still has that. It's like I'll pick up my phone now, or God knows what. I'll go on Spotify, this, that, and the other. And I do wonder if I would have become a writer if I was 14 years old now. I mean, I might have been staring at my phone and going, I'm excited about watching the football. Do you know what I mean? I'm excited about this, that, the other, and they're all going on.
Nice, yeah.
And yeah, I want to write a bit. Yeah, maybe I will a bit. And I look at my daughter, who she spent yesterday painting, but she spent the previous 8 days watching an American cop show, just coming into the room all the time. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, right? I mean, as a human being, that's a completely different conversation. As a creative artist, I mean, the advice I guess I have is being a successful artist is about being obsessed with something, right? And the amount of time that you devote to your obsession, I mean, on one level, the definition of an obsession means it fills up your time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But, I'm also aware of the fact that I have students who they're coming to university to be writers. And at the same time, this isn't a criticism, but it's certainly an observation that you kind of go, what did you do? How was your summer holiday? And some of them say, oh, I didn't do any reading or writing. And you kind of go, you're here to be a writer, but you're not being one. And I mean, my advice is always be obsessed by something and devote your time and attention to it. But how you do that, I mean, that's the question, isn't it? I mean, I think there's no argument that to be a successful whatever sports person, cook, writer, painter, you have to spend a great deal of time working on your art. But how you do that, and how you do that is difficult. I mean, how you do it is by being obsessed by it, of course. But you can't teach curiosity or obsession to people. And I think the culture makes it harder to be curious and obsessed, or focused. Maybe focused is the right word. I mean, God knows if you're a curious person, there's plenty out there, right, to keep you busy.
Yeah.
But in terms of being focused, it's a lot harder. I don't have an answer to that. I wish I did.
I think the answer is obsession. I think you're completely right. I think even from my experience, there's less people that I know that are obsessive about a thing, like just interested there's the kind of like a broad interest in many things, but not like a focused interest in one thing. And from my experience, as you get more interested in a thing, whatever it is, whether it's poetry or football, anything, right? There's beauty in that. There's that kind of like focus, intentionality that comes from like, finding interest in something. And then over time, I've seen it kind of enclose that's just your mode of thinking. You be out as a poet. Sometimes I'll be out and about and I'll see a word and that will inspire me. And it's like, yeah, I'm not always doing it, but I'm always on. It's like a sonar is always on. And I think that's in that you find peace. I think you find kind of like, and I think internally we want to find something, mentioned at the beginning of this thing about finding the thing. Many people I know have difficulty finding their thing because they're so, like focused on so many things. And I think if you just push all that aside and just try out one thing, no matter what it is, you start to see in it so many beautiful things, and then you start to see yourself in it, and then you're off to the races, because then you start to, it becomes a lifelong thing, At least that's what I found. Okay, this was an amazing conversation. Let's bring it home. Okay, so one of the questions that I had also, I always ask people, is if they think about legacy, what they intend to leave behind. You've had such a long career, but I think, when you think back on the career, when you think back on you're going to create in the future also, do you think about what you want people to feel, the emotion people to feel when they read your work? Or do you think about what you want to leave behind in your work and then all the things that you've created?
I think that I've got a number of different answers to that question. In as much as there's part of me which wants it all to just disappear. And if that sounds like it's kind of egoless, I'm really suspicious of that, in as much as I think it's kind of quite egotistical, in that I want to disappear is quite an egotistical thing to say. I mean, it's also egotistical in as much as the idea that I have a presence in the first place. I'm invisible. I'm a poet, right? So saying I want to not be visible to the world, the answer is I'm not anyway. But legacy, I'd like my 2 children to read my books. Part of me, when I was younger, I'd never been unrealistic about being a poet. I do it because I love it. I do it because I can't help doing it. I do it because it's fun, and my life journey has been that. But the idea of thinking I'm doing it to be on bookshelves, I'm doing it to make a mark in the world. I mean, if I could press a button and my books be considered as interesting as the poets I love, of course I'd do that. I press that button. But I don't know. I mean, legacy is a tough thing as well, given the state of the world, right? Universities are closing. The one we're sitting in has got half as many books as the library, that was on campus 20 years ago. People, I think, will always read. People always care about these things. But the idea of I don't spend any time thinking about this, and I don't write anything with the idea of what's my kind of legacy or what do I leave behind. I mean, having said that, for the first time in my life, the stuff I'm writing at the moment is really clearly, obviously autobiographical. And I'm not doing that for a reason. I'm doing that because I can't help doing it, because that's what I'm doing. And I'm happy with the game I'm seen to be playing. I don't know, again, maybe back to being a Buddhist, but I think everything disappears. I disappear, the world disappears. The idea of kind of something that doesn't disappear, what's that? I don't know. I think everything disappears, so I'm not spending any time resisting that.
on that point then about, you know, you mentioned a lot Buddhism, and we've talked a lot about poetry. I think for you, there's kind of like you mentioned, there's a kind of a way they come together. I always ask people to close out podcasts always about the meaning of life, or the meaning they've discovered from life, or if they think there is a meaning to life. What do you think? Do you think there's a meaning to life, and is it related to any of the stuff we've talked about today?